tonight is that God will be glorified and that the world will come to know who He is. Overwhelmed by your glory and your grace, you consume us with your love. Give us more and more of who you are. We can't get enough.
All right, so we've got the Citizens Forum, Community Forum coming up. The Citizens Community Forum, Trinidad and Tobago now. He's an extraordinary journalist. So I have to dot my I's and cross my T's with this gentleman. So it's the Citizens,
Be part of the Citizens Community Forum, a place where we bring to light and discuss critical community, social and national issues.
The volcano, even when it subsides, would leave us, my dear brother Stephen, a prospect of mud flows, and we have had some already.
Prime Minister Gonzalez, the aid that is coming in, is it getting to the people who are in need? That has always been a question.
I would say overwhelmingly so. You will have hiccups, some cases that some persons, for one reason or the other, haven't received. But I would say overwhelmingly, we must integrate what we do at home with our regional institutions and our global partners.
We have to understand and we accept as a business community, we accept, look, yes, there has to be the restriction. But the point is, we are saying don't just give restrictions. Along with restrictions, let's have vaccinations.
Discussions on health, leadership, governance, crime, education and social justice every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m. The Citizens Community Forum. Your host, Stephen Cummings.
Good evening, I'm Stephen Cummings and welcome again to the Citizens Community Forum. Our program this evening, as per usual, the objective is always to have an engaging, interactive and civil discourse on community, social and national issues. Our guests are persons who express views and opinions of their own, views and opinions which are not necessarily that of the station, the Citizens Community Forum or that of the host. I will defend the right of all of our guests to speak, and especially our callers, but with one caveat, that there be at all times adherence and civility, as well as grace and understanding for the views and or comments of others. We can disagree on many points of view, but I believe we can grow and learn from one another in spite of a divergence of views. Now, on Wednesday, 9th June, Finance Minister Colm Imbert presented the report of the Standing Finance Committee on the consideration of proposals for the supplementation and variation of appropriation for fiscal year 2021. We were presented with a 175-page report, a document that will attract detailed scrutiny in the months to come, as it forms the basis for a request of an additional $3 billion by government to finance the affairs of the country, at least until the next larger expected fiscal, which is normally October to September as per our financial year. Now, when we talk about supplementation and variations, it is a time when finances are moved or shifted to other ministries or heads, or when reduction in financial allocations are made in areas of public expenditure. The mid-year review should also take into consideration how an economy has performed, and that's during a period with some prescriptives and recommendations for the following period. Perhaps most importantly, government must be able to demonstrate and make a strong argument as to why there is the need for an additional sum. In the case of our situation, $3 billion to further support some 14 government ministries, and from where and how it intends to raise additional revenue in the face of falling and volatile national reserves, again on the side of revenue collection. Dr. Hussein, welcome again to the Citizens Community Forum, and I know you wanted to focus first on the unemployment rate in Trinidad and Tobago, so maybe we can start there and then we would go into the more detailed matters relative to the mid-year budget review 2021. Dr. Hussein.
The unemployment rate would have increased and the non-energy exports would have also fallen. But more than all of that, I think, is we are seeing a trend in the labor force participation rate, where the labor force participation rate continues to fall.
Yeah.
And so great emphasis would have to be placed on reversing the labor force participation rate decline, and also on restarting economic growth. The economy is not growing, and we need to think about ways and strategize and plan in a coherent way to return growth to the economy, because with growth comes the other things that we like. It brings employment.
Yes.
It brings the opportunity to help the poor adequately. It brings money to invest in capital goods, which can help increase export revenues, so we can get foreign exchange to buy the imports of the various things we like to see in Massy stores and PriceSmart and so on. So we are not doing as well as we in fact, we are doing badly, and we need to turn this economy around as quickly as we can.
All right, so that there is a sense of urgency now for us to look at where we are and to ensure that there is continuity in our fiscal measures and so. But there was another question, Dr. Hussain. As I said, it was anticipated that we would have gotten by the end of April, April 2021, that $2.9 billion. That didn't happen from royalties and so. And another question has to do with which, with all of that projected figure, we are also being told that the country is still in a strong financial position and does not need to go to the IMF at this time, as further borrowings remain, according to the finance minister, remain an option as one of the measures, in keeping with at least keeping the country afloat. Because I also read a statement from you where you questioned as to the economics, because we have falling revenue, there is a squeeze on our foreign exchange, but yet the finance minister is saying that we are in a healthy position financially. How do you how do you explain that?
Well, the minister is looking at the stock of reserves, which I think stands at about 6.9 billion. But we have to look at the stock of reserves in the context of other variables. So our external debt is about 4.6 billion. And on an annual basis, the authorized dealers borrow about 1.29 billion. Request about 1.29 billion in US dollars from the central bank. So we have a situation here in which if we were to take the external debt out of the stock of reserves, we would be close to zero. We would be in a worrying position, in my judgment, and the continued pace at which we draw on the central bank in terms of purchases of US dollars puts a strain on the stock of reserves. Now, how do we change that? We change that by import substituting, so we reduce the amount of foreign exchange we need. And more importantly, by generating foreign exchange. How do we generate foreign exchange? We either get foreign exchange from the energy sector or from the non-energy sector. The energy sector, as we know, are subjected to, the energy sector is subjected to a number of fluctuations.
Yes, volatility,
in terms of price and in terms of production. The non-energy sector, which we have a significant degree of influence over, particularly from the supply side, we are focusing on it. We are not getting all the results we want. The TTMA, for example, has set targets, and we are going after these targets. And I wish the country well. I wish the TTMA well. But beyond that, we need to also, as a government, fix the ease of doing business environment so that the companies that we are turning to generate more foreign exchange and more non-energy export revenues can operate without these various obstacles. And so that's where we are at in terms of that aspect of it. In terms of the energy sector, we all know that the prices for 2020 were fairly depressed, and that's not a sector that I feel we should be putting so much emphasis as we currently are. For the period 2000 to 2020, we placed a lot of emphasis on the energy sector.
Yes,
and we look at where we are now. We are in an economy that is contracting and with mounting debt and with a decreasing labor force participation rate and a host of factors like that I can mention. The point being, we need to move forward in a medium term with a different structure of the economy. The structure of the economy between 2009 and 2019, Stephen, landed this economy in the 25 worst performing economies in the world. Using IMF forecasts, the structure of the economy lands us in the 25 forecasted worst performing economies in the world from 2020 to 2026.
All right.
I don't like those numbers, and we therefore need to change the structure of the economy so we won't end up in that top 25 worst performing economies.
Yes.
So I have a real serious concern for my people and for my country, and I think we need to look at the structure and change it.
All right. Now, Dr. Hussain, I hear you on that point as well. But there was there's another question that you raised with me at an earlier time, and it had to do with the question of borrowing, and you're saying that there's no issue. Well, you have no issue with borrowing, but the question is what you do with what you have borrowed.
Yes. So let's look at the economy a little closer. Why, since 2012, for example, net public sector debt to GDP ratio increased from about 38% to 68% in 2019. So I'm deliberately exempting the COVID-19 year, which is 2020.
Okay.
Non-tradable sector employment increased from 84% in 2012 to 86% in 2019. That's not what you want, Stephen. You don't want the non-tradable sector employment to increase because the non-tradable sector is a big foreign exchange user. It has a lower productivity level, labor productivity level than the manufacturing sector. So the debt to me didn't help there. The labor force participation rate moved from 61.9% in 2012 to 57.5% in 2019 in the wrong direction. So the debt wasn't used to fix the labor market in that regard.
Okay.
Non-tradable sector output as a percent of total output increased from 53.7% in 2012 to about 59% in 2019. That's not what you want at all.
So we've been going in the wrong direction.
Precisely. If you look at transfers and subsidies as a percent of GDP, that's also going in the wrong direction. And also non-energy exports, which was about 3.1 billion, if I remember correctly, in 2012, fell to about 1.79 billion in 2019. Wrong direction. So my humble view and my honest views are that we did not use the debt we borrowed productively enough, and the economy went into a direction where it became more non-tradable sector oriented and therefore less export oriented, and that's not healthy for the medium term progress of our economy.
All right, so that there is there's cause for concern there as well. We were also told, Dr. Hussain, when the finance minister made his presentation, as I said, he had 45 minutes to package that into some make some sense out of it. We were told that for the current financial year, October 2020 to April 2021, weighted average price of local crude was $52.76 US, above the budget figure of $45. And October 2020 to May 2021 saw a reduction in the oil production at 58,000 barrels per day, a little above the budget projection of October 2020. But we were also told that the gas production ranged from 2.6 billion standard cubic feet per day, rising to 3 billion cubic feet and dropping to 2.77 in March. We saw also in April 2.56 and also in May 2.5, so that we have been seeing a dropping where the production is concerned, But and we did reference in the volatility in the market. The production, we were told, the budget production figure used was at that time was some 3.2 billion per day, meaning that the country is below production levels. So that if we continue to slide in terms of our production levels, I don't see where we can, or what other options that we may have, but to sort of go back to that same question again of we've been talking about diversification for what, a couple of decades now. Is that another option that we should be looking at?
Yes, my honest views again are that we need to structurally adjust the economy. The difference between non-energy revenues and expenditures, that gap is too wide, Stephen. And unless we live and the government learns to run this country on a budget that is close to non-energy revenues, for many years we may continue. I mean, when last did we have a non-energy fiscal balance that was close to zero? I can't remember. I suspect it would go back to about 2001 or something, if at all. The point is, in my view, we are living above our means. We are spending out all the energy revenues, and let's be clear, the energy revenues is not yours, it's not mine, it's not this generation owned, it's an intergenerational asset. So for one generation to just be extracting the energy revenues and spending it out, to me is not good fiscal management at all. Also, in investing the energy revenues, it is not as if we are spending out the energy revenues and the economy is growing and it is widening and non-energy productive capacity is increasing, so that in the future you have a stronger economy that could repay and return the energy revenues. That is not occurring. So, long time people would say you are spending top in mud. I think the top is in the mud and it is stuck.
All right, so we have, again, there's an issue there for us to treat with. But you have continuously made the point, Dr. Hussain, that we need to look seriously at our migrant labor force as well, and how that can contribute towards keeping the economy. Of course, labor is what drives economic activity. If you don't have people engaged, if you don't have people working, and in the various sectors, we are going to have we're going to have issues. What do you think should be done now in terms of having a relook at our labor force, and more so the migrant population in Trinidad and Tobago, that can possibly help us in the, if not in the immediate, but certainly the medium to long term?
Okay, so I deliberately stayed away from the immigrant labor force, even because the last time we spoke entirely about that. But now that you bring it up, I will respond.
Yes.
So we have a golden opportunity there. I mean, if you get up in the morning and you see 4 workmen in your yard and they are willing to work for a reasonable salary and they have a good work ethic, I am sure you could clean up your yard and pick all the mangoes that need to be picked and scrub all the walls and get everything that you need to get done, because you now have an able workforce. In general, for you to cross the sea from Venezuela to here in a little period, you would have to be fairly fit, fairly strong, above the age of 15 years, generally under the age of 45 years. So it's a strong workforce. We ourselves have experienced about a 70,000 decline in the labor force, between a 50,000 decline in the employed labor force between 2014 and 2019, if I remember correctly. That 50,000 is now almost counterbalanced by about 60,000 Venezuelan able-bodied people here.
Yes.
My suggestion to the state is register all, and as we open up the economy, let them work. But if we could guide them to work in the import substituting sector and in the non-energy export revenue sector, then we not only assist and humanitarianly, under humanitarian terms, help these people, but we also enhance our own stock of foreign exchange so that it's a symbiotic relationship rather than a one-way relationship, and everybody is better off in the end. That's the view I have. That's the policy approach I would recommend, and I hope it falls on fertile soil at some point in time.
All right, so that's dealing with labor. we have a situation, as you know, Dr. Hussein, with a crisis, in our health sector right now, relative to the pandemic and this whole issue of vaccination. I'm sure you would have seen what has happened over the last 2 days or so with people just basically crowding the vaccination centers. And the issue has also been, which was also expressed by the Prime Minister and by the Minister of Health, that there is a willingness to open up the economy and to get back into some kind of economic activity. But they're saying that there's a process. The mantra was, in order to operate, you must be vaccinated. Operate, vaccinate, operate. Now, how, in terms of economics, how are we, or what is your view as to how we should approach that? Because the small business especially, is saying that we need to get back into some kind of economic activity. What do you have as a recommendation as to how we should go about easing ourselves back into some kind of economic activity with what we have at present? Okay,
so Stephen, after this, I would like to take a question from the audience or two, because I told you half an hour. So if that's okay with you, yes, I would take that, and I would just quickly respond to you here. Mm-hmm. I think the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health is correct. We are where we are because of a number of factors. At the end of the day, I'm not here to discuss the errors that brought us here. We have to vaccinate the people. The Minister of Health and the policy makers, they perhaps need to look at the logistics, get the logistics correct, probably work with the private sector, work with private sector doctors, and work with the TTMA, which seems to have a really good vaccine rollout strategy for their workers, and vaccinate as quickly as we could in an organized manner as possible so that we can open up the economy. You are quite correct, vaccinate and open up. Once we open up, we would start to see some growth return to the economy, but the Minister of Health or the Prime Minister cannot be irresponsible and open up the economy before people get vaccination. That would be an act of lunacy. So we are doing what we could do. I am not pleased that it is being done the best way it could be done. I hope I always like to see improvement in everything that we do.
Yes.
But as we improve and we move forward and our people become vaccinated, we would open up, and I hope we open up in a way that strengthens the non-energy export sector of the economy and the import substituted sector of the economy, so that we move forward stronger and more vibrant.
And you're listening to the Citizens Community Forum on Isaac 98.1 FM. We are also streaming live on FBN TV, our YouTube channel, and of course on Facebook. I'm Stephen Cummings. With me is University Lecturer, Senior University Lecturer, Dr. Roger Hussein, economist, and we are talking mid-year budget review 2021. Now, Dr. Hussein, there's a message that just came through our message board, and you did say that you would entertain a question or two, and the question is, what are the financial options? Is there another case for a pull on the HSF, that's the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and the CF, or the Consolidated Fund, in service of the $3 billion expenditure?
It's always an option to go to the HSF. I mean, the Minister of Finance will have discretionary flexibility there. If it is, he could always argue that production of that the energy revenues fell short of the budgeted energy revenues, and given the formula for going into the fund, I think it is actual revenues is less than budgeted revenues by more than 10%. You could go into the fund. I think that is the formula. So he has all legal right to go into the fund if he wants, or he can go to the external market and borrow money. What I am saying, and I will repeat it again, and I am pleading with policymakers, I don't think we could continue running non-energy fiscal imbalances for as long as we have been doing, and for much longer in the future. The debt to GDP ratio is close to 90%, and we need to start to be tighter in terms of transfers and subsidies, in my judgment. Transfers and subsidies are way too high, we need to cut other aspects of the economy, if we need to cut the size of the public sector, it's not that we want to do it, but we have no choice at this point in time, because if we go to the IMF, at some point in time in the future, they are going to be very tough. What we need to do is to start to make some of these adjustments at a faster pace and save this economy in terms of some of the ratios and values we are seeing in the Central Statistical Office's numbers.
Okay. Well, I know we have just probably about just a few minutes again, Dr. Hussain, but there was another question which just came in, and we want to see if you can address that as well. And the question is, should there be cuts, Dr. Hussain, on the side of our social sector, that safety net that we have held, so dearly for so many decades? And the question is the person here is asking whether we should, or there should be some consideration for cuts in on the social sector side.
Stephen, my honest answer is, except for the poorest and most vulnerable, we have to cut. It's not as if we have a choice. If our level of GDP is back to the level of about 2007, then the level of transfers and subsidies we can accommodate, that also has to go back to the level of 2007. That's the way I see it, but I would be careful to say we protect the poorest and most vulnerable. We simply cannot do better. At this point in time, we don't have the resources. If we continue to borrow and interest payments continue to rise, we will end up with a situation in 1, 2, 3, or a few years down the road where our expenditures will be eaten up by interest payments, and that will eat up part of our education expenditure and our healthcare expenditure. If we had made some of these adjustments sharper 6 years ago, we may not have been in this position now. And in 6 years' time, I don't want to say the same thing again. So the best time, after all the time you have lost, is now.
All right. Dr. Hussain, I think we can leave it there at the moment. I think that's a good way to end, with on that particular point. And I want to thank you again for taking the time to sit with us inside the Citizens Community Forum. It's also a pleasure to get you in and to have your perspective on things that are national in nature. This time we are talking mid-year budget, mid-year budget 2021. And unless there is something that you wish to probably say in closing, I would leave it open to you at this time, Dr. Hussain.
All I would say to my people is hold strong. We have lost some, but we are generally intact. We would get the vaccine, follow the policy regulations of the state, and in a few months, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months, we would open up and we would be able to enjoy life as we knew it before COVID-19. And may God bless all.
All right. Thank you again, Dr. Hussain, for guesting with us on the Citizens Community Forum.
Good night.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Roger Hussain, senior lecturer at the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine, economist, and talking with us here and on the topic dealing with the budget, mid-year budget review 2021. And of course, we went through a few very important, significant areas there, and Dr. Hussain was able to give his perspective as to where we are as a country, where we are going, and of course give some prescriptives for Trinidad and Tobago going into the future beyond COVID-19, and looking at all the different, some of the different options that we can take or have as we move forward as a country. So this is the Citizens Community Forum. I'm Stephen Cummings, and when we come back, we will have some more for you. Stay tuned.
Prime Minister, good evening to you and welcome to the Citizens Community Forum.
Good evening, my brother, and your viewers, listeners. Happy to be here with you.
Mr. Cummings, I think Trinidad has to be proud of this civilian oversight.
Mr. Cummings, you were asking about our operational, you were asking about it from an operational standpoint.
First of all, good evening, Stephen. Thank you very much for having me on your program. A very good evening to all of your listeners.
Good evening, I'm Stephen Cummings. Welcome again to the Citizens Community Forum. We are going to talk about the state of agriculture and farming in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, the Finance Minister presented his mid-year budget review, and of course, you know, there are many sectors in the society who would, sectors which would have would have wanted to had their proposals and I suppose advanced in some way, and what we wanted to do this evening is to focus on the business of agriculture and farming. And I have with me Mr. Shiraz Khan. He is one of the well-known voices on the business of farming and agriculture, and we are going to talk for the next half hour on, again, as I said, the business of farming in Trinidad and Tobago. And we're going to touch a bit on what the agricultural sector, would have been looking for or would have wanted to hear from the Finance Minister's presentation. But before we go much into the subject matter this evening, let me welcome Mr. Shiraz Khan to the Citizens Community Forum. Mr. Khan, good evening to you and welcome.
A pleasant good evening to you and your studio and all who is listening and viewing. Hope that the day has met you in a good way, and the days ahead continue to be better days because of this very serious problem that we faced here. While we all are God-fearing people, we also have to be very careful and cognizant of this, not joking. And I hope that each and everyone continue to do the necessary. In my case, I am a believer of herbs, bush. Every morning I boil my bush. I'm a farmer. I know my bush, even the ones that I destroy and the ones that I don't destroy. And I'm a believer of that. I grew up with it, and since I'm small, I'm involved in farming. I grew up with drinking bush, and I continue drinking it. Okay. So I think that is the way out of this problem that we have.
All right. I'm sure, Mr. Khan, we would probably have another program dedicated towards herbs and the medicinal, benefits.
I would love that part. I would love that part.
We can certainly have a discussion of that, I'm sure, in the very near future. But what we want to discuss this evening has to do with the business of farming and agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, and I want to sort of, take you back to the presentation of the Finance Minister, Minister Imbert. Did you hear what you, I know that you've been making several calls, what is your assessment of what you would have heard from the Finance Minister in respect of treating with agriculture as a whole and farming in particular?
Okay, let me first say that I am a bit disappointed in not hearing more about agriculture, because what's happening is that this pandemic is teaching us a lot of things, and some of us tend to not to learn or listen or want to do anything about it, right? I personally believe that this was an ideal opportunity to place some emphasis on agriculture and let agriculture be one of the important aspects of our economy. For many years, agriculture has been treated as the bastard child of the economy. We have not made, forgive me for using the word, but we have not made agriculture sexy enough to attract more young people, to attract more people, not so young even, into any kind of serious agricultural operation and production. We thought that actually from before the budget review, the midterm review, we thought that the treatment of agriculture at the budget last year, we still haven't had the kind of treatment that we're supposed to be getting, knowing that the world is facing not only the pandemic, but a serious global warming.
Yes.
That is affecting our production. Now, what is happening is that, if you can recall, you interviewed me, I don't know if it's you or your station, because I've done so many, in November, when companies was threatened to increase the price of wheat, and which they did by 20 and 22%, and you find that other companies did it just after a while.
Yes.
because the reason for that is on the global market, China, because of last year, there's serious flood problems and so on, that their production was down to less than 60%. They lost 60% of their production because of the global warming, because of the flooding and the extreme coolness that they face. So what China was doing, buying up all the grains in America, because you know the old saying, I'm sure you are aware of this saying, that who have more corn feed more fowl, right? So China was able to pay large monies to secure their grains, and while we as smaller countries continue to have problems to get supply. And since then to now, our feed prices has gone up from, in some cases, 2 occasions by 15 and 20%.
So we have been impacted with what has been happening on the global market.
International. Yes.
Well, which brings to mind as well, Mr. Khan, about the policies. What kinds of protectionist policies do we have in Trinidad and Tobago to really secure our farmers and by extension ensure that there is food sufficiency and food security?
Unfortunately, none. I keep talking about some sort of protectionism for our farmers, our country. Not our farmers really, but our citizens. We continue, and something that was a very aghast about during the Christmas season. A lot of our high-end supermarkets and groceries had continued to be shelves very filled with imported products, right? And this is, you're talking about a year into the pandemic.
Yes.
Right? Now, if it is that you understand what is going on into the world and what Trinidad is suffering from, you would understand that we need to put some special emphasis on the agriculture sector. One, we need to deal with the pedialasmic, the high cost of inputs, just as how the price of cement went up and everything happening, and we had a complaint about it.
Yes, there's been a discussion about that as well.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
But similarly, the price of seeds, the price of fertilizer, the price of veterinary drugs for animals, it goes up on the whims and fancy of the lack or the fluctuation of the US dollar. Some of our people have a sign at their entrance. Please be aware that prices will fluctuate due to the inconsistent or difficulty to acquire US dollars. And that's a cry for most businessmen.
Yes.
All the chambers are complaining about that. So we are suffering because of that. Right? So we are faced with a dilemma, is that because we are farmers and some of our products, we have to keep selling it at a price that is below cost of production. We continue because what happened is that the imported meat, and it's not like I complaining about it, it's all over the news that the imported meat, which was labeled pet food, but is unhealthy, continues to come into the country. Our Minister of Agriculture in the Parliament and our news conference complain about do not buy contaminated meat or expired meat, but yet they are in the office that is the highest court of the land to put laws to stop it, but you are complaining. I think you should really be complaining for me.
I did hear the Minister of Agriculture saying that even with the imported meat, as you mentioned, that there is no kill date, so that or there was no kill date in terms of what would have been needed to have been posted on or at least have on the documentation. And that in itself, when I heard that for when the minister mentioned that, it was cause for concern.
But you're hearing it from somebody who are in the office to do something about it. You and I can't do it, or any of your listeners. He's sat in a position, or he sat on committees before that he could make changes, which is also as a parliamentarian, because that is where they make laws, not so?
Yes.
All the laws that is being made is in Parliament. He's not in the Parliament, but he's in the upper house. So he still have a decision to do something to change the laws. Now, what is happening is that while other countries are securing and protecting their agriculture sector, we have not done that. unfortunately, you see where you have a problem in a couple of weeks now in the market where the tomatoes are actually selling for $20, between $15 and $20 per pound. You know, you have melangin, eggplant, as some people call it, selling at between $12 and $15 a pound. Because you have a problem where just recently the tremendous flooding that took place affected production in some cases. Right?
You know, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll allow you to develop that point further. But it's interesting that you should mention the issue of flooding. There was some years ago discussion about floodgates and ensuring that we have the appropriate floodgate systems in place, and not just floodgates, but having a sort of modernized system to ensure that whenever we have heavy rains, farmers don't suffer the massive losses that they've had to endure over the years. Your issue on floodgates, have you had any recent discussion with farmers as to how they can probably move forward with policies to address such a matter by way of maybe even recommendations to the Minister of Agriculture?
We continue to make recommendations, but is it the recommendation falling in the right spot? Right? We have some existing floodgates are being badly managed. If you could recall, 2 and 3 years ago, we were protesting by the Ministry of Agriculture. COVID wasn't around, so we could have been protesting. Now you can't protest. For with the serious crisis.
It can be done virtually, but that's another.
But it doesn't have the effect as
agreed.
Typical,
yes, agreed.
Right? You will protest by voice. No, voice now. So some people can turn off their video when you have a protest going on, so they don't see it or they don't know about it, right?
Yes.
That is how the technology is, right? So what happened is that we had this big Caroni floodgates that they normally would put a pump and pump water from the Caroni River into the Warrenville Channel. The Warrenville Channel used to feed people from Caroni, coming all the way down to Buccal, Charlieville, Felicity, and so on, because there was a big channel that was placed there from pre-government, our Republican time. Right, so that channel was always there to satisfy people. So we had a problem where even in 2018, we showed where farmlands was cracking up, all because they didn't. And this is a prolonged problem.
Yes.
Then we have a sluice gate in the Arang West South area, where the operators and them actually open the gate when the flood coming, when it's supposed to be staying closed, and pumping the water out of the catchment area into the flooded river, so that the farmers wouldn't be flooded out. But what they do is that they open the gate to allow fishes to come in, close it, try to catch all the fish, and then pump it out. In that time, the farmers are being flooded out and losing crops. So it's a management issue.
A management issue, yeah.
It is a management issue. We did complain a couple of times to the Minister of Agriculture. He did get it done. But every time there's a flood, you have to call him. You have to he would answer the phone. You have to message him and tell him, look, we have this problem, and send pictures. And that is what's happening. It is a problem when we have flood.
Okay.
It is a bad problem that we have, and farmers suffer tremendously in the back there, because what happens is that the water, when the flood comes, we're supposed to be pumping out from the local flood.
And that's not happening.
From the Arang West area, you're supposed to be pumping out that into the thing. And when the dry season comes, we're supposed to be letting water in for farmers to irrigate.
Okay. Now, Mr. Khan, I heard a discussion.
The problem is management.
Yes, I heard a discussion with Dr. Alan Sami, who I know that you're very much familiar with, and this is what he had to say on a previous interview relative to the business of floodgates.
I know that the Ministry of Agriculture has been looking at what they can do with floodgates and the old floodgates. I've heard the argument about a floodgate needed along the Purai Lagoon area where something exists, but it's not operational. It's not electronically connected. There is no kind of system that allows that at this time. Perhaps it's something that needs to be looked at. The farmers themselves are best placed to tell us how that can be done. And I will certainly raise it again with the Ministry of Agriculture to see how we can look at it. We need to look at a public education program where people still dump indiscriminately. One gets the impression that that is the principal cause. I want to point out it is not. The principal cause is that the state has not been clearing the water courses in a comprehensive manner. People are in breach, but one uses that as the excuse for the overall flooding. I want to say it contributes, but not in that major way we are talking about. We are talking major flooding as a distinct from minor flooding where there is rainfall. But yes, you do have breaches, and yes, people dump still indiscriminately. But the principal causes, in my view, are not those, though they do contribute.
Be part of the Citizens Community Forum, a place where we bring to light and discuss critical community, social, and national issues.
The volcano, even when it's outside, would leave.
Yes, Mr. Khan. Of course, you heard Dr. Sami there.
School between you and I, Mr. Cummins. Shiraz is cool, right? Don't worry. We could be like that today, right? It's not a problem. Okay.
Yes.
So what happened is that you know what happened in this country. We have a lot of things in place, but it's just not working.
The systems are not working as they ought to. Yes.
As they ought to. We have laws for dumping. We still not, because we have a problem in Castlefield where actually Castlefield in some areas are being used as dumps, right? Because it's a lonely area. Anywhere that is a farming area, you will have a bit of lonely area because it's agricultural land is large spans of land. It's not like in a housing development where there's a house every lot. Here you'll get a house probably every 20 acres, which is about a mile apart or half a mile apart in some cases.
Yes.
But what happened? What I want to go back to, right? We met with the Ministry of Agriculture. Every time there's a new minister or every time there's a new discussion, we always go and we submit our proposals, right? And one of the proposals we have supplied, and since 1998 we have been supplying this proposal year in, year out, is one of the things to deal with our irrigation problem. Now, irrigation and flooding is two different things entirely.
Right.
Irrigation is where we need to because thank God, we have started, thank God that this year our rainy season, our dry season wasn't as bad as the years gone by, because we had some rain in February into March. So we didn't have a harsh dry season. Actually, we didn't have no major hillside burning or major bushfires, which is very good for our country. So don't mind we had some global warming changes. It didn't affect us much.
Okay.
Right? So what happened is that we had meetings with them. And what because I want to go back in a little bit to the grain issue that I raised earlier on. Right? When the COVID committee was put together, we submit our proposal to the COVID committee. And we are telling the COVID committee that, look, instead of irrigation and otherwise, we have a solution, because we spoke to people who are as agronomists and what Dr. Rowley is, his profession.
Well, he's a geologist.
Geologist, right? An agronomist and a geologist. We spoke to two people in that area, right? One of the things they were saying is that the reason for some of the major flooding in our country is that we are not removing enough groundwater from the system in the dry season. So we are telling the Ministry of Agriculture and the technocrats, based on some of our intense discussion with other people, we are saying ponds is not the way to go, but some boreholes, so that when the place is extremely dry and we remove the groundwater to satisfy our irrigation, in the dry season, in the rainy season, a lot of that will go back into storage.
Okay.
Because Trinidad lives on water, right?
Yes.
And it is something what can help our people, but alleviate a lot of flooding in some communities. Now, what causes a lot of flooding in this central area is when the Caroni Limited was closed, the closure of Caroni Limited, and also with Dr. Sami area of the Siparia Regional Corporation. Before all of that was Cane area, right? A lot of Caroni lands was there, right? Caroni Limited used to maintain the water course so that the cane would not be flooded, so that they will lose production. But when Caroni closed, right, most of the water courses straight from the place that was holding areas for the crop of the sugar cane, they used to clear the water course all the way down to the sea.
But that's not happening now, is it?
But that since Caroni closed, that no longer happened. And I don't think those regional corporations have the equipment or the resources to continue that work.
Okay. But I know what you would have happening as a response, Mr. Khan, coming from the corporations. They would tell you that they, apart from not having the full complement of personnel, there is a financial issue, financial resources in terms of their allocation. And I've been hearing that for many years, that the corporations, they just don't have the adequate amount of funding to effect and carry out some of those very important, critical administrative and work that you're talking about.
And similarly, right? The Ministry of Agriculture too, because their budget. Because when you interview me on the budget response, we said that we keep losing almost 10 to 15% every year on the budget, because from way back in 2020, 2013,
I have looked 1.5. And I have looked at the budgetary allocations for on each financial year for agriculture, and I have not been seeing much of an increase in terms of the allocation. Now, recently, we've been hearing about a $500 million allocation, and I think that there was also a $57 million in the variation of appropriation when the Minister of Finance did make his presentation. But the farmers are saying that that more needs to be done.
I quite agree, and I'll raise some issues to you in a little bit where we need to get things done. Okay, you're in a good position when you attend a press conference, you or your colleague, because I know you can attend all. That when the minister, we could ask something after 7 months or almost 8 months into the budget, we still not hearing nothing about the $500 million that was allocated for special projects. So you in a position now that you raise it, I will always ask you and seek your help in raising those, because I won't be able to attend a press conference. When you interview me, I can ask the Minister of Agriculture why it is, what happening with our 500. I'm asking the question tonight. Why it is we can't hear something, what happened to the $500 million.
Now, right? I wanted to, before we end the program.
Well, time will pass so quick.
Yes, time is going by so quickly. I wanted to touch on the issue of land tenure, Mr. Khan. I know that has been a burning issue as well, because if you want farmers to produce and to be produce to become commercially viable and reduce on our food import bill, you have to ensure that you have a proper land tenure policy in place. How do you what are you seeing now in terms of the progress of farmers getting the right of ownership to land? Where are we in your perspective? Have we are you satisfied where we are in terms of our current policies?
I'm not satisfied, but the Minister of Agriculture has been making a long, hard effort. It's sort of an effort of a single-handed effort kind of thing, because he has done a lot of things on a personal basis, because he has the legal ability to do that, because he's a lawyer, right? But what has happened for the years gone by, this thing has been taken up a sort of a back shelf, because to me, the authorities not really interested in giving our farmers some sort of a power, because when you have a lease in your hand, you have financial power, right? Of course, we have scrupulous farmers. I am not here to protect everybody and say everybody is fair. There are people who have breached the agreement. There are people who have done wrong things on their land. Some people who gotten land, especially some of the Caroni workers, and sold out their land. A number of things have gone wrong, but it has only left to get like that without proper administration.
Okay.
Because we have people that is assigned to do these things, And yet we, just like everything else, we complain about, the minister complain about how people are not, they're not going and do their work. They are again traveling. They have a job to do and they're not doing the work efficiently. Typical problem and complaint about the public service.
Okay.
But what you have happening is that people cannot access the farmers, the little incentives that are given to farmers. People cannot go to the ADB and get a loan for anything to buy a vehicle, to buy wheel tractors. The people who have private land can do that without a problem. So there's a disadvantage and not a level
Yes.
playing
So
field
you're seeing
for
inequity.
everybody to
Yes.
operate.
You're seeing inequity in the system of when we talk about that distribution process.
Yeah.
Right. I'm afraid we are almost to the end of the program for this evening. Your interview time has gone by so quickly. But what I wanted to do to ask you in our closing moments is to give us a sort of summary, sort of a wrap up as to where you would like to see the agriculture sector in Trinidad and Tobago and farming as well, and what you believe are some of the important immediate things that we need to do now to ensure that we drive more in the direction of food security and food sufficiency in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, one of the things I want to say, we have to thank our creator for the coming in of the Venezuelans, right? A lot of farmers are using the Venezuelan when Trinidadians were not wanting to do that type of work. If you visit a lot of farmers, a lot of them have the Venezuelan working with them. They are some of them is very good workers, and then you have some of them who are very unscrupulous and have adopted the Trinidad mentality the little time they are here. I am saying is that authorities need to put some stimulus activity and some form of protectionism for our farmers. We're not going to have it easy with this pandemic on the rampage, and now with this new thing that come up in Wingsang or in China, Wuchang or whatever it is, that we know that this is going to come out and be a little worse than what we have now. Okay. What we are saying is the authority need to put things in place that we can feed our people. And if we could only forget the politics and think about what it is that is important for the citizens of our country, because I am not only saying that we need food security. What I am saying, we need proper protein security for our people, because we cannot be eating food and blowing up like a balloon, and we can't be a healthy society. Because my view is that if it is that we have to fight this pandemic, we need to have healthy people with good resistance, and you can't get that by eating junk. You need to eat healthy food, proper food, and high protein food that will help you to be healthy in order to be able to battle any sickness, not only the pandemic.
Okay. Mr. Khan, I'm afraid we have to leave it at the moment. There's so much more that I know that we can go into, discuss, but we'd leave that for another program. And I want to thank you for taking the time to sit with us inside the Citizens Community Forum. And indeed, we will continue the discussion. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you and your station for having me, and hopefully that I was of a bit help and not to anger anyone. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you again, Mr. Khan.
You're welcome. Bye.
It was a famous poet who once said, "They came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Words there from famous poet Martin Niemöller, 1892 to 1984.
that is coming in, is it getting to the people who are in need? That has always been a question.
I would say overwhelmingly so. You will have hiccups, some cases that some persons, for one reason or the other, haven't received. But I would say overwhelmingly, we must integrate what we do at home with our regional institutions and our global partners.
We have to understand and we accept as a business community, we accept, look, yes, there has to be the restriction. But the point is, we are saying don't just give restrictions. Along with restrictions, let's have vaccinations.
Discussions on health, leadership, governance, crime, education, and social justice every Wednesday, 8 to 9 p.m. The Citizens Community Forum. Your host, Stephen Cummings.
I'm Dr. Margaret Elcock, President, Founder of LVN Isaac. 2021 is here. The stage is set for a global revival, a mighty move of God transcending all boundaries, all peoples, all nations, as the Church of Jesus Christ unites to fight the forces of darkness in these last and closing days. The battle intensifies, but in the midst of the darkness, the glory of God shines forth as the people worship God in spirit and in truth and in the beauty of holiness. We join with the angels and the elders singing, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Revelation chapter 4:8. The time has come for change. The will of God must be established. His glory must thunder through the atmosphere to infiltrate the airwaves, the media, and all the social media platforms. His voice must be heard. Our location is global, our method virtual, our message consistent and unchanging. We serve the awesome Almighty God Jehovah. We are one in spirit, united in Christ with one vision, one mission, one goal, to go into all the world and make disciples in preparation for his return. Matthew 28:16. We must prepare ourselves with repentance, humility, prayer, and seeking his face for direction so that he will forgive us and heal our nations. 2 Chronicles 7:14. The pandemic has changed our perspective, removed our boundaries, united us in an unprecedented way. We need each other. We are closer together now more than ever before. The time to act is now. Let us wake up, church, and fulfill the purpose for which we have all been called, to take the message of the kingdom to the nations of the earth. Revival 2021 and beyond is a move of God calling the entire body of Christ together to initiate that change. Let us all get on board. FBN, a symbol of strength, stability, innovation, leadership, and authority.